And we're back, and now we'll actually get to our tonight's guest, our featured interview with Luke Anderson. And we were actually talking about how we wanted to start it. And he was like, I'll talk about Chicago. So that's pretty good. So I met this guy 1999, freshman year, University of Pennsylvania. And we spent 4 years of studying and um, you know, and going to class focused on academic excellence and really taking advantage of the world-class facilities that we had. No time to party, no time to really kick back or do anything. It was a grind. I would describe it as a grind. Is that accurate, Luke?
Accurate. Total grind.
No partying?
No fun at all.
Not even a little bit?
No
fun.
Fun.
No fun at all. No fun at all. A lot of library. A lot of library, a lot of books.
A lot of reading British novels. Yeah.
So we graduate. We actually lived together the summer after graduation, right?
Right.
I go back to Baltimore, T. Price. You head to Chicago. Tell us what you did in Chicago.
Sure. So, after undergrad, I went straight to graduate school. I went to get a PhD at Northwestern. I was going to be a sociologist. I was going to study, race and ethnic relations and, maybe inequality, figure it out.
What led you down that path? Why would you do that?
So my father was a sociologist. My dad, Elijah Anderson, he teaches at Yale. He's published 5 books now, or his 5th book's coming out soon. About, a lot of his work is about the neighborhood I grew up in West Philadelphia, or Germantown, North Philly. So, I always had an interest in sociology, and I felt like, this is my career path. But after 2 years at Northwestern, which was a wonderful program, really, the Western sociology program is intense and actually, top notch. I realized that all I really enjoyed was the teaching and not the scholarship or the academic piece as much. I mean, I still enjoy that, but that wasn't my calling. So I left after 2 years. I left and I got a job teaching at a nonprofit, or working for a nonprofit that taught entrepreneurship in high schools all over the South Side and the West Side of Chicago. And growing up in West Philadelphia, I'd always had some sense of inequality, of course, because, West Philly is a predominantly Black neighborhood, lots of poverty. And there's also, West Indian there's West Indian immigrants, there's West African immigrants, there's Malaysian, South Asian immigrants. So I grew up in a diverse situation. So, when I got this job teaching entrepreneurship, I thought I knew what I was doing, but I quickly learned when I walked into these schools on the South Side, the West Side of Chicago, that I had no idea, right? That like whatever context I had, whatever awareness I had, was not relevant for the reality of the South Side or the West Side of Chicago, right? A very different world. If you don't know, Chicago is, one of the most segregated cities in the country, maybe in the whole world, actually, for that matter. You have massive Black neighborhoods, that are, where violence is concentrated, where policing is concentrated, a few miles from some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the country, right? And so I taught entrepreneurship. I spent a lot of time, getting into classrooms. I would coach teachers on our curriculum. I would, run these business plan competitions. I would bring in guest speakers. I would bring kids from the inner city, from their neighborhoods up to downtown. We would go in the Loop. We would go to Goldman Sachs, or we would go to Citibank, and they would get business plan coaching, right? So trying to bridge that gap in whatever way I could, right? Anyway, I realized that at the end of the day, like, I needed more contact time, and my calling was really not to just be parachuting into these schools, but I had to be in a school every single day. So I found a school called North Lawndale College Prep, which is one of the first charter schools in Chicago. And it's not your typical charter school. It's not one of those charter schools where it's about compliance and discipline. It's actually a charter school. It's really fundamentally about really honoring the kids and who they are, right? And so North Lawndale was founded in 1998, or North Lawndale College Prep, I should say, in 98. as one of the first 7 charter schools in the state of Illinois. And what we did was, or it did before my time, what they did was, is they realized that on the west side of Chicago, a catchment of maybe 80,000 young people, right? 80,000 school-age kids, there were no college prep options, right? So if you were a family, and again, it's almost entirely Black, right? Some Hispanic, Latinx, kind of like a little bit South, but mostly Black people. If you wanted to, if you want to send your kid to a high school that was going to get them ready for college, for a 4-year university, you had very few options, right? So that was why my school was founded. And we never had plans to expand. We only had 2 campuses a mile apart from each other. And so I worked there. I got a job teaching English there. And after my first year, they named me department chair. So very quickly I was supervising staff or a team, I should say, or co-supervising a team of maybe 18 people across 2 campuses. And I know Quasi, other folks in the call, right? You all know what urban poverty looks like. You all know what these urban schools look like, right? You're talking about lack of resources. You're talking about a police presence, either outside the building, inside the building. You're talking about many kids who have been taught a narrative about school in which they are not the center of it, right? Most of my students, they came to my school in 9th grade believing that school is an auxiliary thing, right? It's something that some kids are good at. It's a thing you're done to. It's not a thing that you're doing, right? It's a thing that's done to you, right? And I think at North Lawndale, and there's an article I posted about teaching, a couple articles that I published about teaching in Chicago, teaching at that school. Maybe you can.
We're gonna post them. We're gonna add them to the post.
Yeah, so
Post the podcast. They'll be there.
You all can read the details, but look, here's the bottom line. And I think maybe we know this fundamentally, is that in every big city in America, right? Whether it's Indianapolis, and I'm talking about even medium-sized city, Indianapolis, Milwaukee, St. Louis, let alone Chicago, LA, right? Like New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, DC. You show me Houston, show me a big city in America, and I'll show you, right, an urban ghetto, right? It might be mostly Black people, it might be mostly Hispanic people, but you're gonna see a section of the city, maybe multiple sections, where the schools are not well funded, where parents, and by the way, my students, this the stereotype of the inner city of a place like North Lawndale, the west side of Chicago, this high murder rate, the stereotype of these are welfare moms, right? That's not the case, right? My students were children of the working poor, right? Many of them were folks who working 1 to 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs, right? Many of my students worked jobs after school. Many of my students were taking their siblings to school, cooking for them, right? Stuff that I was not doing as a 16-year-old, not even close, right? So the resilience and the power and the assets that my students had aren't recognized because they're not great test takers, right? They're not, they come to 9th grade not having read many books, right? So their knowledge base is low, but man, their social intelligence, their resilience, their ability to persevere, I think, I always told them it was beyond most children, I think, in America, right? So all that to say, our mission was to how can we, figure out a path that as many of these kids can graduate from college, not just graduate from our school and send them off, but how can we make sure they graduate from college? So, it's about affirming who they are. It's about deep learning. It's about deep reading. It's about challenging them. I mean, Quasi, the same things you're doing at SFA, right? The same type of approach, right? We're teaching these children that you all are powerful. Your heritage is valuable. I would read to my sophomores, we would read Native Son, right? And they understood, at least my goal for them was to understand that Richard Wright is reaching into the future to write about you, right? You are bigger in some way, right? You are this person. And I'm telling you, I'm still in touch with these kids, right? I stopped teaching there 5 years ago. On Facebook, on social media, I still talk to these children. They're not children; they're 25 to 24 years old. It's the thing in my career I'm most proud of, right? Is working in this context because of how incredible each of these kids were. And what I'll say, I think another point was brought up earlier, is how as a society, we see these communities as monolithic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But man, in my classroom, the 25, each 25, 28 kids, the individuals in that classroom, I always felt like if I could show the world how individual all of you are, how unique you all are, how powerful all you are, right? That I think is what it takes to like help people understand, right? That's what King was up to, I think, in some ways. But so anyway, that's like in a nutshell what I was doing, right, in Chicago. And like I said, I miss the kids to this day. You know, I really do.
What are you doing now, and how did you transition? Because
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah.
like it's such a powerful, that has such a profound impact on your life. But you told us earlier you're in Providence now.
Yeah. So having small children, here's what I think too, is that in the context, I think there's a shelf life for that kind of work. I'm in awe of teachers who can do the work I was, if you're doing it the right way, if you're really bringing the energy the kids need, if you're giving them feedback on their work, I think there's a shelf life. Like after 6 years, I was at a point. I mean, I got my master's in leadership. I was like on a track to become a principal, but we then had children, and I was burning out. So we moved to Rhode Island, where my wife is from, and you know, I got a job at a charter school in Pawtucket, which is a relatively it's a disadvantaged part of Rhode Island, and most of my students were Latino and Black, and I loved it. But after a year, we were looking for a school for my daughter, and there's this great school called Gordon, literally 2 minutes from our house, and so we enrolled my daughter in kindergarten.
Can you describe Gordon?
Oh my gosh! So okay, Gordon is founded in 1910, founded in Providence by a woman, which is unusual in 1910 for a woman. She was a doctor, Dr. Helen Cook. She founded a school. She named it after her son, Gordon. And so it was like one of the first co-ed schools in Providence, in New England, actually. And in 1956, I believe, maybe 1961, I forget the year, they left her spot in Providence and moved to East Providence. And now the campus is, I mean, it's 11 acres. It's like this network of these beautiful red roof buildings that are all interconnected, all these walkways. There's a creek, there's a pond, there's a sledding hill. Like my kids, when it snows, my kids go sledding during recess, right? Like that's like, it's so we have all these advantages, and this, like I said, 11 acres, like all multiple fields, beautiful field house and gymnasium, whatever, all that. Teacher to student ratio is like 8-1, right? Think about that, right? Like you have tiny class sizes, right? I have classes that are 12, 13 kids in some cases. All the things you want in a progressive education. But what really sets us apart is that about 25 years ago, our head of school wanted to change our mission. He decided that our focus should be on racial justice. And this is a white guy, by the way, a white guy coming from an aristocratic family in New England, who decided that we're going to change our mission. And, it was difficult. Some families weren't about it. Some teachers weren't about it, but like they persisted. I mean, the school persisted. And so now we're at a point where racial justice, so there's a board mandate where we have a certain percentage of kids who have to be people of color, right? So it's 40%. It's a board mandate. Guarantee you have to have 40%, right? Now, what does that mean? Now that doesn't mean Black kids, that doesn't mean Hispanic kids, right? But that does mean that we're attentive to that. We have way more teachers of color than most schools. I have a colleague, our gym teacher, who's taught my students PE for like years, or taught my kids PE for years, my children. He's from Camden, African American dude from Camden, New Jersey, right? Big Eagles fan. So we talk, so it's like we hire people of color, right? Our head of schools is a woman of color. Our second in command is a person of color. Yet it's still a white space, right? In terms of who goes there, right? The majority of kids are white, upper middle class, right? So that's Gordon, right? So I came from like the one of the most disadvantaged situations. I mean, still successful, by the way, right? Where I taught in Chicago was, the kids would say it's the safest place in their neighborhood, right? They knew that, right? That was an important piece, or one of the safest spaces in the neighborhood. But now I'm in a space where kids have every resource they could possibly imagine, and but our school's mission is social justice. So one thing we started 20 years ago is the civil rights trip. So as 8th grade humanities teacher, I lead at my school, I lead a affinity group for like middle school kids of color, right? Every Friday they come have lunch in my room. But also I teach 8th grade. I teach this 2.5-month Black Studies unit that culminates in us taking the kids down to Alabama and Georgia, right? Where we walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We go to Montgomery. We go to all these sites. We go to Ebenezer Baptist Church. We see all the places that King and all these activists lived and worked and did their thing. So, it's a trip, right? Because we have so much privilege. And like I described to you, 8-to-1 teacher student. I mean, it's incredible. But, we do the work, right? We're trying to like promote this social justice piece where our kids come out of our school, the white kids, Black kids, all of them included, having a sense of reality, right?
Have you gotten any feedback from graduates, from people who graduated and gone on, or?
Oh yeah, man. Like, I mean, it's funny. So Providence has a lot of independent schools, a lot of private schools for such a small city, and many of our students go to these like these private schools, some of the public. But the feedback is always that Gordon kids are always the most able to have conversations about social justice, right, about race and stuff like that. And I mean, it's every school has its flaws, but I really feel like we're walking the walk to the extent that an independent school can walk the walk, right? I think that's something to be real about.
Yeah. I didn't want to. Anybody have any questions or any comments or anything like that?
No, that's pretty amazing.
Well, I can identify with the burnout aspect of it.
I was gonna say, Sean, some of those things he was talking about were distinctly familiar, right? There's like
I had to make a mental adjustment. I came in to the energy and trying to this shit. You'll drive yourself nuts if you work it that way. But I'm not teaching like what you're teaching. I'm teaching Spanish, right? So
right.
It's like I had to make an adjustment. Like, damn, I gotta try to treat this shit like a GED course, like just a lot of repetition and make sure you just get concepts and material and then say fuck it. Like,
I actually don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the population of kids that Sean and I have are probably more similar to the kids you had in North Lawndale.
Sure.
So I got a piece of advice from, he's like a legend. He's actually held, I think, pretty much every position at the school. Now he just teaches history and coaches girls basketball. He's been teaching for like 37 years. He said, you can't save them all. And like, that just stuck with me. Like, I love teaching. Like, I love reaching out with parents. I love developing lesson plans. I love like trying to make them like get the best out of them.
Yeah.
But like, it's all within like the subtext of like, I can't save you. I can only teach you, right? Like, so.
Well, look, yeah. I mean, here's the reality: is that a school can do so much, right? I mean, the idea. I mean, if you think about the West Side of Chicago and the gang culture that exists there, the mass incarceration piece, the lack of jobs, right? The daily humiliation that so many people experience there just because of what it's like to be in that community, right? Like, a school can do so much, man. Like, like I've had kids shot and killed, and kids who I still think about all the time. Kids who, like, I had as a freshman advisor. As freshman advisor, they were there as 14-year-olds who like literally are not alive today, right? And through no, and it's what I find fascinating is that, because like I think Sean, it's like Spanish is one thing, right? Like as an English teacher, like I was trying to help the kids. Like literally, my class was, are they going to be successful in college or not? If you can't write, like don't even go. Right? Like if you can't write an essay, like don't even go to Southern Illinois or Western Illinois. Like don't even try, because you're not going to make it. Right? It's just like I pushed them so hard. Like, you need to write essays, and I'm going to make you write so much.
So many. That's all I do.
You're going to get sick of me. But you gotta marry that with also like, ways to affirm their humanity. And so we have debates like, around like one debate was, to what extent can the problems on the West Side be blamed on Black people? Right.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask that question to an Ivy League class at Yale or Harvard, they would say it's all structure, it's all society, right? They would all say that. In that classroom, it was 50-50. A lot of people would say like, no, it's Black people's fault, which I think is, again, it's like this internalized racism in some ways, like internalizing like this, like this right?
Acceptance of the narrative, right? Yeah.
Right. But it's also real though. It's also like we would have kids, like there was one boy who was killed, he was 15, this like tragic situation. Boy was like, he was out in the streets, he was like shot and killed. And like, I remember the next day it's crazy that we just would talk about it as if it was like a, basketball game. Like the kid, we just talk about it. And I'd be like, so how do you all feel about what happened to, I won't say his name. And some were like, yeah, it's so sad, it's so messed up. A lot of kids were like, that's his fault. He was out there selling drugs. He was out there doing his thing. I'm in the house. I'm going to school. I'm doing my thing. Like it's his bad, and that to me was like such a trip. I was like, wow, talk about internalized racism, right? Where you're blaming a 15-year-old, right, for like his own murder, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's so again, that's some of the things that came up in the school,
Yeah, man, that's
I couldn't imagine that.
The burnout part is very real. See, like your colleagues, what do you see them doing when they are burned out? When they decide they don't want to teach anymore? Like my mother was a teacher for over 30 years.
Yeah.
She's retired now. She had to go out on disability retirement because teaching was so stressful. It was impacting her blood pressure and ended up developing another aneurysm, just because of being in the classroom for all those years and having to deal with a lot of the things that you talk about, not being able to save them all.
Right.
Yeah.
What have we seen? Crying fits, grown men, hair falling out.
Hair falling out, people's hair turning gray, people's hair falling out. I'm like,
much. I mean, having like sitting there watching my mom watching the news, and then she starts crying because she's like, "Oh my, that's one of my kids."
yeah.
What do you? I mean, and I'm sure it's more difficult now than it was back when my mom was a younger teacher. So
you have to compartmentalize it. Is the only way I could describe it. Not everybody is built for that kind of work. Straight up, like when I was department chair, we would hire teachers. I mean, that was my job, to hire folks and determine, can this person actually do this? And a lot of
people walk out of the classroom. It's happened. My mom has seen people walk off the job and come back.
I mean, I've had conversations like with like people, like with teachers who we had hired or people who have been there. I was like, look, is this what you want to be doing? Because, because if it is, this is what I need you to do, right? You cannot, like, you can't half-ass it. Like
the kids are going to test you to see if you're built for the shit.
Yeah, they are
all the time. Like that's what they do every day.
Every day.
And that's my response. Like I'd be like, motherfucker, I was one of you. I talk the shit with the best of them. So let's do it if you want to do it. You know what I mean? So it's not as stressful, but everybody's not equipped to deal with the kids on that level.
Yeah, they're not. Sean, because most of them, they're like afraid of the kids. That's what I'm afraid of them. They're afraid of the kids. I mean, like if you're afraid of the kids, I would tell the kid, like if you're afraid of them, they're gonna know it first of all, and like
they're definitely gonna know. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Think about any teacher you ever had in your life, right? You like them.
Yeah.
There's no teacher you ever had who was a good teacher who taught you something who you didn't like, right?
Yeah.
Even like the asshole teacher, they at some level you still
some quality that you respect.
You got some value out of it. Yeah.
Kids can't learn from someone that they don't like. Period. Yeah. Right. And that is such a fundamental truth. And like, how do you, like, at the end of the day, some people just got to leave the profession, right? Straight up. It's like, and I think that's, and I think once my kids finish at Gordon, I really feel myself going back to that work, because that's where I felt most, it fed me the most. But yeah, there's a lot to it, man. I mean, it's, here's the thing is that, I'm acting like it was hard. I mean, it was fun for the most part. Like I enjoyed my time.
I have fun.
Right? Like it's fun with being with these kids. They're funny. They're like, they're good, and you see, well, I think also the benefit is that you see what society doesn't see, right? Like my students will be walking down, they go to Michigan Avenue, they're on the L or whatever, and they're seen as a threat, right? but
Mhm.
that's not who they are, because when they're in a group with like 25 people, when they're all being seen and heard, all their personalities come through, and they're not that like that armor that they
They're
put on,
all different.
right to
Yeah.
go through the world. So I try to soften the kids. I try to try to soften them up as much as I could, and be like, look, you,
Right.
even the hardest kid, like, yeah, you're a big softie, like, stop it, like, stop with this like hard act, like, it's not who you
They're
are.
Yeah.
kids. They should be.
They're all posturing, just preparing for what they see outside in the street or in real life, and
Exactly.
testing each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As well they should, by the way. It's a good defense mechanism.
Right. Yes, you need it. You need that preparation.
I mean, I would talk to kids, I'd be like, yeah, wait, so you have a gun? Like, what are you talking about? And they would look at me like I was stupid, like, Mr. Ernst, what are you talking about? Of course I have a gun. Like, how am I supposed to walk around, right? I'm supposed to walk around, right? Like, as if I'm the idiot, right?
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyway, it's deep though, and I'm working on, I'm doing a lot of writing, trying to like humanize these kids, because I think that's what it takes. I think, as much as I appreciate Black Lives Matter, and I do, it is an important movement and is doing a lot. I don't think that it achieves that humanizing aspect. I don't think it's ironic. Maybe this might be an unpopular opinion. I think the phrase Black Lives Matter, I think that, even though I think I don't think is able to get at the humanity of Black people in a way, right? And I don't know why that is. Like, look how it hasn't worked. Look at all the white people who are against it. Like, why is that? Right? So anyway.
I think I think the term, the phrase, the word Black in America is alienating.
True.
It instills fear in people. It's just one of those things.
True.
But the BLM, we have, in order to cover the BLM stuff, that'd be a whole nother episode. We probably have to.
What would you suggest in place of Black Lives Matter? I'm curious, because I have no idea what would work.
I don't have it.
Gun down.
No, I don't have it. Yeah, no, I don't have it. I know. Look.
We need fucking. I told you we need Matthew. We need to hire Matthew McConaughey, buy out all the channels, like go over all the police killings and the details, and like open your eyes now. Imagine they're white, and boom, shit would be.
They don't want to. I think it's easier to not think about us.
I agree.
A lot of times, I don't even think about
in their
us.
faces.
I think you're right.
They don't. It's sometimes it's even worse. It's like they really just do not care. We're just kind of in the way.
I think that's right, and I think this, because it's crazy. Like, to me,
love us and need us.
The backlash to BLM to me is just so profound. We can learn so much about that. Why are people so upset about it? Like, why are they so mad? Like,
people. And then at the same time, go ahead, Walter. I was gonna say there was a placating by corporate America, right?
Right. It just says Black Lives Matter, and that's the issue, right? That's why they come up with something else. All lives matter, blue lives matter. I mean, it takes away from who we are as individuals. We're not saying that lives matter, that we're the only lives that matter. We're saying that in this particular instance, we're the ones that are hurting.
Right.
We're the ones that are going through all the BS. We're the ones who are getting shot by cops with our hands in the air.
Right.
So
if they accept that we are the ones that are struggling the most, then they have to also examine how they've been complicit.
Mm-hmm. That's the self-evaluation is something they refuse to do.
Yeah, will never be accepted. Yeah.
They really don't want to believe that there are two Americas. They really think that, like, oh well, if the cop shot you, you had to.
If they face that truth, they're forced to face the ugly within themselves. And they've been told their whole life that you're white, that's far, you're good, you're wholesome, you're pure.
Exactly. You're not privileged. Everything you have that you've worked so hard for, it wasn't because someone gave you a head start. It's not because things are easier for you. No, the playing field is level. You're as tough and smart as you think you are.
You just rose to the top because you're the fucking cream.
Right.
You're white.
Luke, do you have anything that you want us to plug that we haven't? Book, other than the articles? I'll attach the articles as I remember those.
Yeah, I'll post. No, yeah, I'll I don't know if you have those. I'll send them to you. I don't know if I send them to you, but honestly, it's like I just appreciate a chance to just converse about this a little bit, because it's, always on my mind for sure.
Dude, it's great. I'm gonna stop it now because I feel us going towards a BLM talk, and that would that would extend the podcast tremendously.